Welcome to Wednesday to Tuesday, episode 4, the podcast for QSR operators who don't just show up on the weekends, they run the whole damn week. I'm Hunter Charneski. I started as a late shift sandwich artist at one of his Subways, and under 2 years, I was overseeing 16 stores as a senior district manager. Now I'm transitioning to the Taco Bell brand and bringing everything I've learned about leadership, culture, and turning chaos into performance. That's David Taylor. He's my co-host. He's a true vet. He's got over 37 years of QSR and hospitality experience, including decades with the Subway brand. He's led through tough trends, turnarounds, and tough markets, and he'll be the first to tell you he's still obsessed with getting the basics right. Together, we're bringing you real stories, blunt numbers, and field-proven leadership that actually works on the floor, not just in a spreadsheet. If you're serious about building teams, running lean, and leading from the front, then you are in the right place. And hey, if you want to lead yourself with the same precision you use in store, then grab a copy of my book, The Way Out of Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery. That's available on Amazon.com as well as HunterCharneski.com. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe this and send this to someone who runs their business like it matters, because it does. So I had a topic that I was going to talk to us about today, but then remember, so before the show started, I told him to put that on silent,
I did put it on silent.
And now we're 5 seconds in and the thing's going off. So, but I'm actually really excited for this because this is something that you and I think had a bit of a vision. Sounds pretty romantic or grandiose about, but I'll just cut to the chase. I was looking for ways to connect with other people in specifically our position at the store level in QSR. So I went to Reddit and I posted a selfie of myself during my break this morning between 10 and 10:30 a.m. And I just gave them the gist. I said, hey, I used to be a senior district manager with Subway, running 16 stores, gave them some stats and the reason why I left. And now that I'm back at the store level, I really want to help this community. And the subreddit was restaurant managers on Reddit. 13,000 people in there. And about 4 hours in, we have 24,000 views and about 30 questions. So we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try. Yeah. There are things that we diverge on, which is great. I mean, when you're raising up leaders, they should not agree with you 100%,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's the goal, is to raise up leaders.
Yeah. So let's just see what we got here.
All right.
And we'll start with number 1 here. So I've already answered a few of them. I think the way that we'll do this is I'll just elaborate on, because I can only write so much.
Right.
Right. And then I'll obviously give the floor to you. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
Do you have one single method for firing a Quirky Buddy 1449 asks, do you have one single method for firing a genuinely nice person who is trying but just not able to do the job? So if we're talking about something that you have always told me, which is the job is 90% attitude, 10% skill. I mean, there's got to be a seat for somebody. There's got to be a seat somewhere in that store for them.
Right.
Are they in the right seat? I think this is what you have to ask yourself first. Now, if you've tried and there's only so many seats, or if it's just not working, we're making a change.
Yeah.
I think that's all.
I know your quote line that you're going to say too.
Well, now I feel like I'm on the spot. But I rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah, rip the Band-Aid off. We're making a change. You don't got to get long-winded about it, because then I think you're going to dig yourself into a hole that things are going to get unprofessional and messy and personal. Just, we're making a change. And when you do that, tell them to list you as a reference, because they do have a good attitude. They're not. The seat could transcend the brand that you're with as well. Maybe they're not a very good sandwich artist, but they could be a really good crew member elsewhere. What are your thoughts on this?
No, I agree, but I guess I'm delving a little bit deeper in the who, what, when, where, how, why kind of thing. Just that question I don't think of employees as disposables.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that question, I don't know what that individual has done up till the point where he's gotten to the point where he says they want to fire him. You know, my first reaction is that did you, as his boss, delve deeper into him? Because obviously he mentioned that he's a great employee, he's just not getting it.
Right.
Did you take him outside of the store? Don't do it in the office. Don't do it in the store. That's intimidating and confrontational. But then ask him some questions. Hey, what's going on? You don't know what's going on, and if this is someone that you really, he said in his post, I value. You don't know. Did his dad die yesterday? Is he working with a mother who's had cancer for the last month? It's affecting his performance. Delve deeper in there. Next is, hey, I know you, and I know the quality of work you can do. But tell me how you think you're doing. Let him self-assess. Let him, self-assess.
Yeah.
Instead of just beating him over the head with this, and this, and that.
Questions are the answer.
Right. And then, hey, I know the quality of work you can do. I think you can do better. What do you think?
But I don't think it's a quality of work issue because they're saying it's a genuinely nice person.
He's genuinely nice person. They just don't get it. QSR is not for them.
Yeah.
You rip the Band-Aid off, and if you have another seat somewhere else in your organization that they might be fitted for, do that. If not,
put them in HR.
Huh?
Put them in HR.
Put them in HR.
Yeah.
But if not, you know what? Like you say, QSR is not the seat for you, and we know QSR isn't for everybody. Because if QSR was for everybody, we'd have no doctors or garbage men or whatever.
Right.
So you rip the Band-Aid off, but you do it in a way that this guy is still going to be a brand ambassador for you.
It's exactly what it is. If you have to fire them, keep it short. Rip off the Band-Aid and tell them to use you as a reference. That good juju on the way out could lead them to referring you people in the future. Limit ugly exits as much as possible.
And I have people that I've had to fire that I'm still friends with.
Yeah.
Friends or acquaintances, or they talk to me, or, they've sent me business. And I had to let you go. Right. Yeah. But we did it in a way that it wasn't like, you suck. Right. Get out of my store. I've had a few of those.
Right. But I think that there's a quirky buddy 1449er. There might be a little bit more discovery that might need to happen, because if they're a nice person,
attitude is,
it's like they put him in front of a customer. If have him work the POS, just work the register or something. Right. But
because you can't train attitude,
right?
And you hire attitude.
Yep.
A lot of responses.
Yeah. Okay. So here's one. Psychologically Alarmed asks, how do you develop people and maintain them that you simply don't like? And I told initially, and I'm sure I'll excavate this a little bit further. So I told him, listen, I think it's a bigger opportunity than you think, because you're going to have way more people that you don't like to work with than you do like to work with. Right. So, I think it's one of those things where if you hire your friends, you're eventually going to rip each other's heads off, because familiarity breeds contempt. But if you can turn somebody who you don't like into a good performer, well, then you might just start liking them more because they're starting to perform. Right.
Exactly. And, there's that whole family team mentality. As a leader, your organization isn't a family. It's a team. Teammates are developed. Teammates are trained. You played football. You didn't like everybody on your football team, but y'all worked for the common goal.
Yep.
Y'all worked to get the touchdown, to win, get the win. I don't know how many people have we hired over the 4,000 or so. I didn't like all 4,000.
Right.
But there were those that were team members. You have to separate the personal from the professional at times. And as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
You're developing a team. You're not developing a friend.
Yeah.
My wife, who used to manage a retail location, used to say, when she'd hired someone, she says, I don't need you to be my friend. I have enough friends as it is.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to be a team member.
Right. And I think,
I think that's a hang up that leaders can get into, is that I want everybody that works for me to be my friend.
a hang up. It's like the biggest hang up. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah.
It might, that and victim mindset might be one of the biggest problems in QSR at the manager level. We have a victimist mindset, and we are too worried about being liked instead of being respected.
Right. Oh yeah. And don't evaluate them like you would evaluate your friends.
Mm-hmm.
You evaluate them like you would a team member.
Right.
What contributions are they giving to my team?
Yeah, what is their objective by number? We talked about that last week or whenever it was. Yeah, what is their number? But I think it's also ironic. I just realized that so the person that commented on or asked this questions, their name is psychologically alarmed. Well, without reading what their name was, I dangled a little bit of psychology in the second part of my answer. If you don't like somebody, or it doesn't even have to be limited to people that you like and don't like, but when you're looking to develop somebody, you got to know what it is that they want, but also what it is that they don't want. Right? And so then you can use what they want to motivate them, right, toward that, whether it's more money, recognition, or growth in the company, whatever the case may be. Use that to motivate them, and that will do a lot of training for you, right? And then the other piece of it is, what are they trying to get the hell away from? Remind them of that. Don't be a tyrant about it. Don't be Machiavellian about it, but just give them gentle reminders. Like Michael Irvin, who was a wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys in the 80s, one thing that he was deathly afraid of was running slants over the middle. Because back then, I mean, they didn't have the rules that they are now. I mean, you could decapitate a wide receiver going across the middle. But he said he was more afraid to go back to the ghetto than to run a slant route.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So that's the piece of that where you're just gently reminding, it's like, you don't want to go back to where you came from, right? You're in a good spot here at McDonald's, Papa John's, or KFC, wherever it is. You don't want to go back. Let's go forward.
And don't biggest advice, don't evaluate the person that reports to you as the same, with the same set that you evaluate friendship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Don't look at the employee or the person as your friend.
Mm-hmm.
They're your team member.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference.
Right. So this one we could kind of answer a little bit, kind of just shooting from the hip if we're not doing that already. But somebody asked me, and this is kind of why I sent you that voice note this morning, because this person asked, Daddy Longstrokes, amazing, amazing name. They said, why did you start with the brand/franchise instead of starting your own?
Wonderful question. Goes back to entrepreneur and intrapreneur.
For those who don't know the difference, tell them.
So an entrepreneur is someone who starts something from the ground up, or an entrepreneur.
Yep.
That's your Ray Kroc, your McDonald's brothers, your Fred DeLucas, your Peter Bucks, your Mr. Bells,
mm-hmm.
Who started a concept from the ground up.
Right.
Just got done reading something about the guy from Panera. He's starting a new concept that sounds really interesting, and he's almost 80 years old, 77 or something,
mm-hmm.
starting a new concept. Those are entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Intrapreneurs are the people that come into already established things, i.e. franchises,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You just go in and lead, develop, look at you go in internally and become an internal entrepreneur.
Right.
So as I was 22, 23, As a 23-year-old, I'm not going to start up a restaurant. I had a small, my partner had money. He called called us, asked, for us to get involved. But franchises are a great place for people that you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You can go in and become a leader, become a very successful operator, and you have all this support around you that if you're an entrepreneur, all this support around you have to buy.
Right.
Or all that support around me is paid for through my franchise fees.
Yeah.
So I have great backup and support, and I can just focus on my business.
Yeah.
That's why. I mean, but there are people that start their own business, and I love it.
Yeah.
It depends upon your mindset. I wanted to own my own business
without reinventing the wheel.
And without having to start from, the ground up necessarily.
Yeah. And for myself, it hasn't even been 2 years yet since I've been in the industry, and I'm not hubris enough to think that I can start my own concept yet.
Right.
I'm still learning so much. There was a lot that I learned with Subway. There's a lot I've already learned with Taco Bell, and way more to learn. So I'm still learning now. Could there be a combination? I don't know.
Sure.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So
and like you said, you're still learning. As a leader, as a franchisee, if you're not learning something new every day, something's wrong. Reevaluate.
I think the next question comes from somebody who was looking for a little bit of a pitching their services a little bit, but I think it's a good question nonetheless. Who keeps the windows clean, matching the cleanliness of the rest of the restaurant? I said, and my thing it was in general. I think everyone ought to own the cleanliness piece.
Oh yeah. So, it's. I use the 30-30-30 rule. So it's 30% food cost, 30% labor cost, 30% fixed cost. In that fixed cost would be me hiring someone to clean the windows.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to hire someone to clean the windows.
Right.
I have no problem taking I walk up to a store or a location or something. I can wipe down a window.
Yeah. As soon as you know as soon as you have to, I think you have to. It's not that he's asking the wrong question.
No, he's asking a great question.
It's just that you also have to sort of ask a different question, which is, when's the last time you went into a dirty restaurant? Yeah. What did you think about it? Yeah. Did you walk out? Did you think the food might be a little bit suspect? If the front of the house is indicative of what the back of the house looks like, yeah, I'm out of here. Well, once you relive that moment, then definitely the managers, at least on your team, should take an onus on them to keep the place looking clean.
Right. And I guess I'm delving a little more into this question is, are they asking, I was hired as a crew employee. So cleaning the windows is my job. Because if that's the question they're asking, or
the person.
I understand.
Yeah, their name is pressure washer.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I said I think they're a little bit of a pitch.
There are times where we have to use outside services, and we do, and I contract them, and I've used window washing services, I've used pressure washers. I think every business, every QSR business is different. The model is business. How the person that owns the franchises runs their business is different. So to me, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. Moving on to Bonnaroo asks, what's your strategy for getting frontline staffs to buy into you or your methods? And you should know the answer as far as what I'm about to say on this one is you gotta tell a story. You gotta tell a story. A story is another word for mission statement, but you've got to tell a compelling story that invites your team into it. Because if it's a story just about you, then nobody's going to be really interested. But if it's a story about them, where you are positioning yourself as the guide or they're the jet fuel to help them grow, to build them into something better and bigger than themselves. Success is in succession, right? And if you tell a really compelling story, which is why I also talked about it, I think in the first episode, if you're a manager, you probably ought to be spending some time at your local Toastmaster to help to develop your public speaking skills, because you're constantly speaking every shift, all the time. You're coaching. So that would be my first answer. Would be you got to tell a really compelling story that invites your crew into it, that positions you as the guide, not the hero. They're the hero. Customer first, employee more first. And you're going to help them get to where they want to go.
Right.
Period.
I mean, I lead by stories to the point that I have to remind myself: have I told Hunter this story 10,000 times already, or not?
The answer is almost always yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that you lead by stories, but also I think a very powerful question. I touched on this earlier. Is this? Hey, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening?
Yeah.
That's a very, very, very powerful question. And you're not necessarily asking that like, hey, what's going on in the store?
Mm-hmm.
Just what's going on?
Yep.
I value you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what's going on.
Yep.
And then you lead by stories. This is why we do this way. This is why we focus on cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell the airplane story.
Yep.
This is why we make the product this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell the $1 million story.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent millions of dollars talking to hundreds of people about what tastes the best.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we do it this way. This is why you put your cash in the cash register this way. All dead presidents lie the same way. What does that story mean? You're less likely to shortchange or to overchange a customer if your money's neat. Yeah, so you tell stories.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that this post has gotten so much traction is from a story. September 10th, 2023, I was a sandwich artist. And then less than 2 years later, I'm a senior district manager. Like there's a story in there. And a lot of these people have been doing a lot longer than I have, and they have way more experience. So for me, it's just like, you guys can do this and more. If my dumbass has done this in less than 2 years, like, you guys have no idea the gold mine that you are sitting on for your future, your finances, and your family.
Never have the hubris to think you're the smartest person in the world. Ever.
Yeah. Nope.
Even if you are, never have the hubris to think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, whys are big to me.
Mm-hmm.
Not, hey, Mr. Employee, do this like this. Done.
Right.
Hey, employee B, do this like this. Done.
Right.
You're not leading, you're not coaching, you're not training.
You're being a boss at that point. Was Hold My Whiskey, Hun. Amazing.
That's a good one.
Was trained to be a district manager. I was a bench manager of 3 local stores. Leadership was looking to fill the gap in training. Honestly, just a basic question: how do you do it? I was pushing 80 hours a week. My position was hourly, so OT made up for it. Also, I have to ask, what's your taco time? Time to make a single taco. So we don't do taco time. We do speed with service, and then we do overall speed with service, because the other part of speed with service is drive-through time after 5 p.m. We don't do taco time, but that's not a bad idea. As far as pushing 80 hours a week goes, or how do you do it in terms of the leadership standpoint, is a delegation. You have to be able to delegate. But then it goes back to the question that kicked off this AMA, which is identifying the right seats for the right people.
Right.
So when you learn what somebody's strengths are, then just put them in that right seat and let them run with it. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. You just gotta identify the strength, put them in that seat, and just get the hell out of their way.
So if you work for an organization that equates amount of hours you put in with success, it's not a good metric. And so you need to evaluate that.
Mm.
If you work for an organization that says you're successful if you work 80 hours a week, that's not success.
Mm-hmm. That's indentured servitude.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have talked a lot about this, Hunter, and we've talked about most QSR restaurants have a tremendous amount of training
Mm-hmm.
focused on the employee, the crew, the front-facing customer.
RGM
and
on
the
down.
manager.
Yeah, RGM
The
on down.
manager on down.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of energy in development and training for those positions.
Mm-hmm.
Almost none for district manager, senior district manager, operations director, almost no training.
Right.
And I think the biggest problem that a lot of people that go from a manager of a restaurant to then overseeing multiple units is they still try to run that position as if they were still the manager of a restaurant.
Yeah.
And we need to, I think that a big failing or a big opportunity in the QSR industry, and I'm speaking to all of the HR, all of the HR leaders in QSR, is develop training for your district managers, senior district managers on up.
Mm-hmm.
Have as much focus in training on those positions as you do on the general manager on down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much an analog learn by doing. We identify somebody who's a really good manager and leadership talks. Do you think this person can do it? I think they can do it. All right, let's see if they can do it. And that's pretty much pretty much the talk as far as becoming a district manager. Yeah.
And we know, you and I know people that are phenomenal managers
Mm-hmm.
that would not be phenomenal district managers.
No.
And so my advice to you right now, because that's not there for you, is you're going to, on this Reddit question, asking questions, you're going to have to develop yourself and force yourself to develop yourself through leadership, through reading books, the way of, there's other great books out there. You have to develop yourself because honestly, there's not a tremendous amount of support out there for those positions out there.
You could subscribe to this podcast.
Exactly.
Which I think is part of the reason why we're doing this.
Exactly.
Right. So hopefully that's helpful, but delegation is huge.
We're not doing this. We're not doing this to toot our own horns. The biggest role of the leadership, especially servant leaders who lead from behind, is seeing people rise. And we're hoping that that's what we're doing.
I'm really interested in what your answer is to this one. This one's going to be right up your alley. Are you ready for this one?
I'll try.
SLXXZEXGVNG. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it other than just spelling it. I run a kitchen for a small business that has about 6 stores. My store has the lowest sales. Our food cost is supposed to be no higher than 30.5. My labor for the whole building cannot exceed 15 front and back. It's difficult to hit these numbers with low sales, but it's possible. I just have to end up doing most of the work and cut my employees aggressively to hit these numbers. They aren't getting their full hours, so a lot of them move on. My district manager says our turnover is about 90. Do you have any advice on how to manage food, labor, and employees being pissed daily because of the hours?
That's a great question. So, obviously, as franchisees, our goal is to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the volume over margin question. And I would focus on the volume over the margin. Now, I don't know what business you're in, what your franchise, the owner of your organization's rules are. But I can understand, though, these are targeted goals. We have a 30% goal across the board. You got to hit 30%. If I'm coming into, this is a thought experiment. This isn't my rule. This is a thought experiment. Okay, employee, you got to hit 30%. and you can't put percentages in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Percentages aren't dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So what's more profitable? A $10,000 store doing 30% or a $14,000 store doing 32%?
The latter.
The latter. You're talking labor's the same. You're talking 9,000 something versus 7,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would talk with your leader about what and how can we do to increase volume.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's not going to be an ROI right away, but what can I do to increase volume? Can I offer a 10% discount card to X school, Y school, whatever? Yeah, it's going to bump up my food cost a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely going to increase my volume.
Mm-hmm.
Volume is more important than percentage.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what to do right now, it's a conversation with your team. Hey guys, I'm not the bad guy. This is where we're at. These are our sales. For us to be profitable, this is what we got. This is the food cost and the labor cost that I have to hit.
Mm-hmm.
It has no bearing on you as an individual.
That goes back to the question before, when you're in that position, to invite them into a story.
Yep.
At that point, because that's what actually kicks off a story, is a problem.
I think
We've got a huge problem right now. We have to come in. Our cost of goods has to be X. Our labor can only be X. What are we going to do about this? I mean, a story is a problem a story is a problem when a character wants something and has to overcome conflict to get it. So without the conflict, there is no story. So that is a great opportunity for you as a leader to sit down with your team and discuss what it is that they're going to do. Because then when they're going to get involved in the process, then they're going to be involved in the process. Right? So what are so tactically, some of the things that I wrote down as bulleted is, are you people upselling at every point of contact throughout the sale? Right? And then this is something that I had to talk a little bit about with my GMs, was their people getting over the idea of selling. They don't want to be salesy. The difference between, and that's there's a distinction that's happening there. It's the wrong one. They think that closing is selling. Selling and closing are not the same thing. So
closing the sale.
Yes. Selling happens selling is what happens up until you hear the word no. Closing is what comes after the no. Closing is when you're overcoming objections. I'll have to talk to my wife about it. I need to think about it. I don't have enough money. Now isn't a good time. And you're overcoming those objections. That's closing. Would you like a drink with that? No. You don't push past that. That's selling. Selling, you ask, and then if it's a no, it's over. Right? That's the difference between selling and closing. Selling is everything that happens up into the no. Closing is what comes after the no. You're not overcoming objections in fast food. You're not doing that. So that if you had any sort of scarcity around sales, I would encourage you to know the distinction between selling and closing. That's number one. When it comes to selling, are they, like you taught me, are they assuming that their drink is going to be a large?
Yeah,
right? Are we? But then again, are we assuming that they're coming with sides? Right? What are we washing that down with? Yeah. What do you want for sides? Not would you like a side? Assume that they're going to get a side, and it's going to be the largest one possible. Right? Are they? Yep. I did all that, and we talked a little bit about this on our second episode. Develop brand ambassadors both out of the store and in the store. Right? Who are the regulars that come through there? Can you make them a brand ambassador and make it worth their while for doing so? Can you make your team brand ambassadors and make it worth their while for doing so? Are there schools and or colleges nearby your store that you can partner with and become the official hospitality partner of? So we were the official hospitality partners for Grand Valley Track and Field. That's my alma mater. We were the official hospitality partner for the West Michigan Ironmen. That's the professional football team I played for. You can inject work outside of work, and your team can do so too and be rewarded to do so. And when you do that, not only are you going to get a bump in sales volume, but you're also going to be quite literally getting paid to play, because you're doing things that are outside of work, but that you're bringing into work and you're getting paid for it. That's a pretty good gig.
It is. So the answer to the food cost, labor cost problem is always increase volume. And, I know the reaction from a lot of franchisees, leaders, is when volume starts shrinking, they start to be profitable, to maintain profitability, to hit labor, to pay the employees paychecks. Then you start squeezing food costs and labor costs.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can squeeze it so hard that then it has a negative effect on volume. Great businessman in Grand Rapids, who's no longer with us, owned the largest luxury clothing store in the West Michigan area. And I remember one time he said, had a humongous advertising dollar. When times were good, he didn't advertise, didn't spend a dime. When he was losing money and times were bad, he'd pump hundreds of thousands of dollars into advertising. It's the only way I'm going to hit profitability is increase volume.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of anathema to how you would normally think. Oh, times are great, I'm rolling in cash, I'm going to spend it on this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
But, the exact opposite is true. Times are bad, I'm going to spend more money on advertising, or I'm going to push more about brand ambassadorship and increasing volume.
Yeah, and maybe that might be a more in-depth podcast, because then we're talking about things like lifetime value and how much it costs to acquire a customer, and then you can go from there in terms of how much dollars you're willing to spend, because you're going to get X out of the lifetime value of an average customer, and all of those things, and we can nerd out about that.
He or she on this question, they're looking for an immediate answer to solve the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
the immediate answer to solve the problem is talk to your leadership and say, what can I do to increase volume?
Yeah.
Because that will help. And bring your team into the story. I think there are times where leaders, especially managers, actually hold too much back from the people that they work for instead of sharing with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a difference between sharing gossip and drama versus hard facts and numbers.
Yeah.
My partner said, I will show anyone that works for me, even the newest hired employee who's 16 years old that works 15 hours a week, I'll show him my P&L.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem showing any of the people that work for me, 4,000, however many, I'll show them all my P&L. I don't have a problem sharing with them. Yeah. I'll tell them when we're not making money.
That's true. He did tell me that. He told me that.
Yeah. I mean, it is share as much as you can with your people, but then also don't share the things that you're protecting your people from.
This question is all you. Alarming result 1413 asks, hey there, I'm about to be a GM for a fast casual chain. My franchisee is awesome and pays me pretty well. Do you have any advice for a successful new store opening? How do I become the best store in my franchise group? I want to be the best GM in my district.
Phenomenal question. I love that. I mean, one of my favorite things is opening up new stores. Is that develop a playbook. How, first of all, if you got a franchisee who you can talk with and say, hey, we're going to spend a little money on this to become the number one, a great goal, by the way, is first night of a new store opening, we overhired. I mean, we would overhire employees. And then every single employee, the night before the grand opening, we invited every single one of those employees' family, your wife, your kids, your mother, your dad, your siblings, your brother, your sister, your grandma, your grandpa, your cousins, to come in and get a free meal. Cost me a lot of money. Every single one of those people I was trying to turn into a brand ambassador. So immediately I had 7,500, 200 people that are brand ambassadors. Yeah. And they all got cards to pass out. You got a free meal, and they're all going to talk nice about you. Yeah. They got a free meal, and their grandson works for you. Right. So they're all going to talk nice. The next day, the next week, you overstaff. You spend way more on labor than you would. I mean, you blow your labor budget.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the time when you're opening up a new business. That is not the time
To cut costs.
And it is also not the time to say we've got to hit 15% labor and 30% food costs. That's not that time to do that. Because if you're doing that out of the gate, you're not going to be successful ever.
I would say two more things on top of that would be to get involved with your local BNI and your local Chamber of Commerce. So BNI is Business Network International. You would meet with them once a week. It doesn't have to be you, right? But it's literally a leads group. And you are there giving a 30-second commercial to sometimes dozens, if not more, of entrepreneurs locally. And you're consistently reminding them who you are and where your store is, and you're asking for referrals. You're asking for business. That's what the group is for, is to ask each other for business. That's it. That's why the group exists.
BNI's Chamber of Commerce's.
The Chamber of Commerce will come to your store for free and do a ribbon cutting.
So we would invite, the last store we opened, we had the township supervisor, because it was in a township, not a city. Township supervisor. I had my banker there. I had, and we did a big ribbon cutting ceremony. I had some contacts in local newspapers. You don't want to, get those. And you develop as much and generate as much
buzz,
excitement and buzz as you can. And now, especially social media. Every single one of your employees is social media expert. They're posting.
Yeah.
They're posting on Facebook. They're posting on Instagram. They're posting on, TikTok and Reddit and all of the social media platforms. If there's any, if you're in a college, in a college community, invite the football coach. We had a store right next to a large university. I invited the athletic department. And some showed, some didn't. But hey, come in. I'll give you a free sandwich.
This last one here, I think we'll have time for this evening is, I'm not sure if there's a question in here, but I want your input on it. Where did it go here? Here we go. Bat North 6508 asks, we have survey contests and there's a high cash reward for the most guest surveys. Some employees have been known to do the surveys themselves. We have one who gets high survey counts, but she is a very toxic worker. She's rude to guests and openly discriminates. On paper, she's a store favorite, and our manager won't do anything because it helps them and it makes them look good. As a former district manager, did you benefit from reviews as well? And wouldn't faking reviews be considered fraudulent?
It is fraudulent. I am not. I love reviews. I'm not a humongous fan of the anonymous vehicle for reviews.
Yeah.
I would rather, and I have done this, be in a store for 5 hours and talk to the customer after they've been waited on. I'm getting an honest review. Or the how was everything kind of thing. Or here's my business card, give me a call. I like those kind of touch points versus the anonymous reviews, because anonymous reviews, I think you're just basically asking for complaints, or you're asking for this type of scenario. And I've we've experienced this scenario before. And as a leader, you have to look at it and say, is this employee toxic to my team? Are they infecting sales? Are they denigrating my team? And if that is, forget the survey. I think sometimes we can put way too much emphasis on customer surveys. I love customer surveys because they point out what we do good and what we do bad, as an analytical thing. But I don't make decisions on keeping or letting someone go based upon what.
This is, I mean, this to me is very typical self-sabotaging behavior, because when you, with something like a survey where there's rewards attached to it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite isms, and I think it's actually mine, is when you want something bad enough, you'll do something bad.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Faking it.
So survey rewards, we changed that. We used to do a survey reward. You got an X amount of dollars for every positive survey you had. And then we started to see a little bit of this.
Yeah.
You know, like an employee, you know, asking their 20 friends to put in, and, you know, oh, wow, then I made $100. Those 20 friends put in a positive survey. So then we took that away. And then we did it based upon positive surveys. You just got your name put into a hat.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could win more money versus the small amount if your name was drawn. That helped a lot. But your manager, you need to coach your manager that, and you also need to make sure that your analytics and your store success is not necessarily tied to surveys. We all know how to fake Google reviews. You know, so if you start getting a bunch of negative Google reviews or a bunch of positive Google reviews, that's your sign to delve deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this truly a picture of my store? This store got 4 negative Google reviews last week. But is that a true reflection of the store? You need to delve deeper. Secret shops.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with positives. If you have a store that's getting lots and lots and lots of positive Google reviews, you need to delve deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
This was great. I like this.
Isn't that fun?
I love this format.
That was just shooting from the hip this morning when I was on my break and like, yeah, let's try it.
Yeah.
And then here we are. So yeah, so I'll post this in that particular Reddit, and let's do this. Let's do this again.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Again, this is Wednesday to Tuesday. I'm Hunter Shransky. That's David Taylor, and we will see you guys next time.